Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ViewfindHer podcast. I am your host, Mya Saree Gray. I am a filmmaker, musician, and mother of two. Now, traditionally, on a camera, what you look through to see what you're going to take a picture of or video of is called the viewfinder. It's that little thing. Well, this is an old camera, but this is the little thing that you look through to kind of just see what you're going to take a picture of. So, on this podcast, I want to take you guys to see how I see the world through interviews with amazing people that are making a positive change in this world. With that being said, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the ViewfindHer podcast. I'm your host, Mya Saree Gray, and today we will be talking about inner peace, yoga, and inclusion within the yoga community. And today I have yogi Corina Parkmond and also owner of Please Breathe Yoga to help me discuss this and to kind of lead the conversation about the importance of yoga. So, Corina, can you introduce yourself and just let the people know a little bit more about Please Breathe Yoga?
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Maya. Like she said, I am the owner of Please Breathe Yoga here in Waterbury, Connecticut. We service to everyone in the Waterbury community, and even a little bit on the outside of Waterbury. We had our third year anniversary of being in the community June 1st, and I've been teaching for 4 years, and we've been around for 3 years in total. So I have a lot of rapport with the people in Waterbury. I was born and raised here, so I recognize the people on a much deeper level than what everyone else would recognize these people as. There's a big love and a real sense of community in Please Breathe Yoga, and it's a lot of good love just coming out of Please Breathe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
My one session that I did, it was just really uplifting. I mean, I know I was recording at the time, like with the camera and everything, because Corina was also a part of a Face Like Mine film, but it was still very powerful. And I feel like you, as a leader, as the yogi, as the instructor, are very you listen to what the level that each person is at, and you kind of go with that. And that kind of segues into my second question, which would be, how do you feel that the yoga community is or is not inclusive enough to beginners or even to people that don't fit the quote unquote stereotype of who practices yoga, if you will?
Yeah, that's a mouthful, first of all. That's a whole mouthful. I before I get into it, I do have to say the yoga community is getting better simply because those outliers who don't fit the yoga instructor standard are starting to open up spaces for others like them. So plus size Black yoga instructor from Waterbury opens up Please Breathe Yoga. And then she, invites other people who look just like her to come and do their thing. So yeah, we are getting better in that aspect. And then other yoga studios are starting to see that and learn from what we're doing. I feel that with inclusion, when it comes to body ability, size, flexibility. I don't like using that word. But on the terms of yoga, it's really it can sometimes be a little unfair. It can sometimes be really horrifying. And these people are coming to a space to try to heal and breathe and explore some new things, And when you're told to not be at the front of the room because you don't fit the quote unquote yoga person, it really gives you this hard look at yoga, and it really makes you look down on it. So when people come here and they have this history, or when they come here and they're some odd months pregnant, or when they come here and they're a freaking bodybuilder that can't really bend over to touch his knees, let alone his toes. I open my arms with, a warm heart and a lot of understanding, lots of patience and grace, because that's exactly what it takes to do yoga. You have to give yourself that, but before you can give yourself that, somebody has to give it to you first. There's not enough grace, there's not enough love, there's not enough patience in the yoga community right now. It hasn't been like that for a good while because it's such a profitable market right now and it's very saturated. If you ask me, I'm sorry, but it's really it's heartbreaking to see some things sometimes, and then at the same time it reminds me why I'm here in the first place. Or when I look at people like Jessamine Stanley, who's a plus size yoga instructor who has no problem getting in a bikini and showing people how to do headstands or splits, or how to specifically use yoga blocks, short hair, big, beautiful woman, when I see people like that, I'm like, okay, I'm in good territory. I know I'm in the right place. I'm here to help. if that makes sense.
Oh no, that definitely makes sense. And it is crazy too, because from my understanding, the origins of yoga was in India, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times from what I see, it's like this kind of like mainstream who practices yoga, and it never really includes Black women a lot of times, you know what I mean? So even for me, when I started just practicing it and just learning more about it, it was like, wow, this is what I needed, you know what I'm saying? So my question to you is, what do you feel like the Black community, specifically maybe Black women or Black men, can benefit from practicing yoga?
Yeah. So with that, we see various schools of thought within the Indian yoga philosophy, and well, that's very ancient, but it's very ancient. And a lot of the times people feel like, oh, we don't do that. You know how I feel about that phrase. So when you take your brother and your sister and you say, well, hey, there's this thing called comedic yoga as well, and they start to see how African in nature yoga was, and then how Indian in nature yoga was, and how beneficial they are from both cultures.
Wait, pause a second, because you just said what? The origins of yoga are actually in Africa too?
There's lots of studies being found. It's not official, but there are some studies being found that our ancestors were doing yoga, most definitely. There's a if you look up Kemetic yoga, Kemetic meaning ancient Egypt, before it was called Egypt, Kemetic yoga, they're finding studies all the time about specific poses, about certain breath works, philosophies, and so on, and even within that, it's hard to say yes or no to that, because we as Black people, we can't read hieroglyphics. There's not too many of us in that field who are trying to uncover and unlock those things, and to see how deep our roots go. So we have a bunch of other people kind of, discovering things. But then you have men in women going to Africa, seeing some new things, and then looking to see, okay, how did they exercise? How did they meditate? How did they do breath work? You know, in a way, you can almost say everything that we know today was started in Africa. That's where civilization started. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But when the topic of comedic yoga comes to play, it's like, no, it started in India. And it's like, yeah, but it did, you know, have some origins, maybe not to the extent that
Putting a name on
Indians
it,
took it to.
like putting a name on it, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that was just their way of life, you know? We can't necessarily say they were doing yoga because that is an Indian word meaning to yoke, to become one with. And there's a word in ancient Egyptian languages for that, but I don't believe they used it and put that label on what they were doing.
Yeah, it was just
Does that
lifestyle.
make sense?
It was just like a part of their life.
It was just the life. It's just what you did. You practiced your breath work. You know, you stretched regularly. You took time to meditate. You understood that you had a spiritual being that you had to take care of. That was your culture. There was no specific thing that they called it. So, but it is very healing, both realms, the African and the Indian, you know, forms. They're very healing. They're very eye-opening. Perspectives give you lots of insight. Different perspectives give you lots of insight. When it comes to the Black community, I just want to answer your question. When it comes to the Black community, we have a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of escape and survival mode emotions and activity that we partake in. And it's hard to explain to a person in that state why yoga may be beneficial to you. But once they see a person like me or a person like you with our faces, you know, a face like mine, once they see that, they say, okay, if she can make it through college, boom, I can do that, you know. Or if, and there's also yoga for recovery as well. Shout out to Chauncey. Shout out to Chauncey. She's a white woman, but you know, she's been super helpful with Please Breathe. Some people could say, if I can see someone doing recovery through yoga, I can do this too, you know, especially in the Black community. But yeah, it's a hard science to prove to anyone, but Black people especially, it's very hard to prove, to say that this is healing, this is beneficial. There are various philosophies and ideals here that you can take and use for yourself, to better yourself, to love yourself, you know? So that's where I think it's an issue for me, because I'm still learning as I go. Like I said, I've only been practicing for 4 years amongst giants who've been practicing for 40, 50 years. But it's a really hard thing to bring to Black people sometimes. But once you get them into it, it's like, I see, I understand. This is why we're breathing. This is why meditation is important. You know, I can actually stay still right now. You know, my anxiety is lower right now.
So how do we like force it, if you will, upon Black people, or not force it, but just, you know, let them know it's not just a bunch of gibberish or a bunch of, it's more than just stretching, you know, it's more, how do we like inform them?
Well, you got to meet people where they're at. You got to meet the people where they're at. So you got to take the time. Again, it takes patience, grace, and love to introduce any of this to anyone. when it comes to Black people, you need a little extra. You know, I mean, I can say it for myself. It took a little extra love, grace, and patience trying to wrap my own mind around this. But you have to meet people where they're at. I feel that when you have an older individual who says, oh, we don't do that, and you sit them down and you say, well, hey, well, let's just take a few moments to breathe. When's the last time you've paid attention to your breath? It's like, I breathe all the time. When's the last time you've paid attention to your breath? You know, I didn't ask you, how often do you breathe? So it's like, that's the difference. That's where you're meeting them at. You have to, it all starts with a conversation, and you have to lead in these conversations with love and understanding, ready to listen and not, you know, debate everything that they're saying in the name of yoga. You have to be able to say, okay, if this is your understanding of what this is, let me show you the flip side. Or if this is your understanding on breath work and meditation, let me, you know, explain to you the flip side of that. It's hard to do it with adults. Children, because I work with children. I'm in the public school systems here in Waterbury, Connecticut. When it comes to children, because they're so much like sponges, teach them these breath works and they'll carry it with them throughout the rest of their life. You teach them these music meditations and they calm themselves down. These difficult to work with kids have these natural tools to help themselves out. You know, you allow these kids to become self-aware and say, okay, I'm a little hyper right now. What can I do to help myself out? Okay, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take the time out to breathe. In my classes, I often let my kids know, if you need to take the time out for yourself to step out and take a breath, do it. And you can do your own thing. And they do. They respond to that. They take all of that in. And it's so amazing because they love it. They love that they can acknowledge what emotions they have. They can, you know, figure out why they're feeling that way, and then find a solution to better that, advance that, or put that to the side. So I'm sorry, I'm going into so much depth. I'm so passionate about kids.
No,
but it's so beautiful to see kids taking that on. And I work with primarily kids of color. You know, I have Asian, I have biracial, I have Spanish and Black kids, and, you know, a few white kids as well. But all of them are taking it in. Not once have I ever heard a kid tell me, I've never seen a Black yoga instructor, or I've never done yoga with a Black person, or, you know. I often also explain to them that flexibility and yoga have nothing to do with each other. So, yeah. It's the main purpose of yoga is more mental than it is physical. The physical poses that we often see in mainstream media, that's pretty new to yoga. Yoga isn't ancient, but this poses and all of that, that's a lot of gymnastics, which is cool. It's good. It's meant to help us. It's nice, but the very beginning, there was little to no poses. You're meant to sit. You were meant to sit and meditate and expand your mind and become one with it. That was the purpose of yoga originally. But when gurus in the East came to the West, they had to make it look profitable. You see what I'm saying? So if you have these nice, beautiful poses and shapes and twists and turns you put into it, it's like, oh yeah, this is cool, this is pretty good. And then you have the breath work and the meditation at the end. So it's pretty interesting when you dive into the history of yoga. But outside of that, I often have to teach my children and my adults, your body is different than my body. Our bodies are all different. Our bone structure, our muscle structure, the fascia around our muscles, how we're feeling that day, how we're doing, how we slept in the night can affect how we move and how we do things. So my kids get that. My adults, however, sometimes they're like, I did it yesterday, so I'm going to do it again. And it's like, your body doesn't want to. Your body doesn't want to. One of my biggest rules in class is to always honor and obey your body. You have to honor and obey your body before you start doing anything else. You have to honor and obey your mind, heart, and body. Because if you don't, it's not going to work out. Not going to work out.
With that being said, obeying your body and everything, does that come through like deep breathing? And like, can you explain the benefits of just focusing on breathing alone?
Yeah. So, benefits of breathing. I always say to people, you can go days without food, maybe days without water, but you can't go too long without your breath. You have to keep breathing. You have to keep breathing. Now, when you're talking about yogic breaths and the philosophy behind breath, it's super important that we incorporate that into some of our knowledge, because our breath is one of the most powerful natural tools that we have. It can help us balance and maintain. It can clear us out. We have stagnant air sometimes in us that affects us emotionally and even hormonally, aka gas. And when you breathe with purpose, with intent, with an idea behind that breath, it moves you in a direction of, okay, I'm here, I'm present. This is what's going on with my body. I can now tune into X, Y, and Z. So think of your breath as the bus that gets you to your destination, right? As you're breathing, you're riding that bus. And then once you get to your destination, oh, there's a knot in my neck. Oh, I just have a little gas. Maybe my hip's a little off. Maybe I need a massage. That's your destination, right? You now can take that same breath and move it into those body parts. Now, it sounds crazy when I say, take your breath and move it somewhere. It's like, how? It's just going in my lungs. And it's like, it is, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't, but it is, right? Your lungs, and this is kind of why I love my logo for Please Breathe. It's a pair of young lungs with flowers. Think of your lungs as these little tentacles that take your oxygen and move it throughout your bloodstream, and then it gets carried into the body, right? So you have your lungs, then you got your bronchi, and then you have these little things at the end of the bronchi called alveoli. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I only read this stuff. I only ever read. And what happens is your blood rushes past that alveoli, and it takes what it's, brushing by, and it sends that into the rest of your body. So when you do this with purpose, with intent, you can almost visualize and feel yourself softening up if there's a tight muscle in your neck. You can almost understand a little bit better why you need to go to the massage therapist this week for your hip, and so on and so forth. But the breath alone is good, is very good. However, when you're able to use the breath with movement, it's a whole nother ball game. And it's just all beneficial. It's beneficial all around.
Yeah. So like, what would you say to someone like myself who wants to get more consistent with practicing yoga, but has how can I say this? Like, when I do try to practice yoga on my own, I feel like I'm doing certain things right, and then I feel like I'm not doing anything right. Like for me, when I'm in a class or like at a, like say your class, you're telling me like, do this, do that, do this, do that, focus on this, or like do this stretch. So it's kind of easier for me to, go through and feel like I really had a good session. So my question is, how do you, do it on your own if you need to.
Yeah, most definitely. The thing with practicing the physical aspect of yoga is obviously you get a different feel when you're alone and then when you're in a classroom. When you have somebody directing you, be it YouTube, in person, whatever, you have instruction, you have idea, and you're being directed. When you're alone, it's like, okay, I have a bunch of distractions around me. My mind's here, you know, am I doing this pose correctly? Right? So you're questioning yourself, kind of. Sometimes it takes a few times to go to a yoga class and to get some ideas going in your head so you can take that home with you. Other times, you just start to move your body. So yoga and dance are very similar, very similar. Once you get your body moving, once you see what feels good for you, once you start to discover different capabilities, it opens up. Things become a little bit more smoother, more fluid and liquidy. After I graduated college, I actually, I did yoga by myself in my room, and I had a small room at my dad's house. But I was doing yoga by myself, and I saw I was losing my yoga. I was losing my can I say mojo?
Yeah.
Okay, mojo. I was losing my yoga mojo. And I said, I need to be around some people. And within that, I went to different yoga studios and I was getting some ideas. And I said, okay, this is kind of refreshing. Then, but I was an experienced yogi at the time. I wasn't an instructor, but I was very experienced. However, things just weren't clicking for me at the time.
Yeah.
The vibe is different for you when you're around people and then when you're by yourself. When you're by yourself, it's very important to center yourself first and then get into the movement, right? So do a little meditation at first. Lock yourself in a room where no one's going to distract you. Put a sign on the door or something. You know, get some good music, positive, uplifting music if there are lyrics, and then have yourself to just start to move after your meditation. Maybe swivel around in your seat, maybe start to roll the neck, etc., etc. And then as you go, you see your body wants to move and you got to go with it. But some people can't do that, right? Not everybody can do that. That sounds super easy because that's what I do. I do that, you know, that's essentially what I do. After that, I started getting into YouTube videos and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is nice. Again, I was an experienced yogi. So I was able to copy what they were doing on YouTube. I could see, you know, a yoga with Adrian or Elizabeth Ariana or yoga with, what's her name, Shanika. I can do all of that. But some people can't because they don't know if they're doing it right. Even though they literally see what's on the screen, they cannot, you know, have the confidence that they're doing it right because Shanika isn't gonna respond to you. How you doing? You know, Adrian's not gonna say, okay, your foot's in the wrong place or align yourself better. Yeah. So there's benefits to practicing by yourself. There's benefits to practicing with a group of people or, you know, an experienced yoga instructor. It's hard to practice on your own. It's a totally different vibe, you know. You're not being directed. You have to direct yourself. Yeah.
So, you know, I've heard the importance of, you know, maintaining like a strong core and in order to, you know, progress in yoga practices. And can you just like explain that a little bit more and how someone can work on their core to, you know, ultimately become better at yoga?
Yeah. So your core is the center of your upper and lower half of your body. You know, you keep a lot of stuff in there. You got a majority of your organs in there. You got some big things, some little things, some things you didn't even know about, you know, to strengthen it should also mean to stretch it. In yoga philosophy, we say sthira and sukha. Sthira meaning effort, sukha meaning ease. When you have your core, and this goes for any part of the body, but I'm just using this philosophy for example. When you have your core and you want to strengthen it, you also have to give it stretch. So twists are a really important part of your practice. Strengthening the core, boat pose, planks, those are very good. That keeps you balanced, it keeps you centered, and it also allows you to have better posture. And I am a posture freak. I really am. So I often, when I get the request for abs, I do the whole shebang, front, back, side, and side. Okay. A lot of people think it's just the abs, and it's like, no, we have other parts. We got the obliques, we got the front abs, then we have the back. Once I start getting into the back, it's like, everyone's like, wait a minute, that's not part of your core. Yes, it is. It definitely is. So, but also, when you strengthen that for the sake of balance, for the sake of posture, for the sake of, you know, just looking good and toning up, you also have to give it that twist, the stretch. When we twist ourselves, we allow ourselves a little bit more ease, right? Your core holds stale oxygen, stale blood flow, stale energy. When you twist it out, you want to think of your core as a washcloth that's getting wrung out. You know, again, our breath is going to help us to do this. So we have our oxygen entering us, and then we expel the old, you know, we move out the old blood flow, and then we take in some new stuff. Same thing with energy, but that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, working with the core, strengthening and stretching the core is one of the many reasons why most people, almost everyone I've seen, has to use the bathroom right after yoga class. It's because we're doing so much with that portion of the body. It's like, okay, now we have new, you know, we're flushing out the old and now we have the new. So is Thera and Sukha, that's always the philosophy I bring up when core is brought into play.
Okay, now where can people come and do some yoga with you and be a part of Please Breathe Yoga?
Yeah, you guys can meet me at the 720 Holistic Wellness Center on East Main Street, 1741 East Main Street here in Waterbury. Our schedule is on the Please Breathe Yoga website. So please go to pleasebreatheyoga.com to sign up and see our schedule. I do personal one-on-one sessions. I do personal group sessions for family and friends. Well, family and friends with you guys, you know, not my family and friends, but I do personal group sessions. So, oh, and then we're also having park yoga next Monday at 5:30 in Hamilton Park. So if you're off of work and if the weather is good, I will meet you all there.
Thank you so much for being a part, and I will be there. So
yeah.
I look forward to seeing you then. And thank you guys for watching the second episode of the Viewfinder podcast. Thank you again, Corina, for being a part.